Hey, I'm here to answer the question today, why does budgeting stump me? My name is Michael House, and I'm a financial planner with Tapestry FP, where we help people make their wealth mean something. We use the phrase weaving wealth with meaning to describe that. So I like to answer questions that real people ask. So today's question comes from a young man who graduated recently from school and is just kind of starting out. And I'm going to read what he sent me so that you get a feel for where he's coming from. So something that stumps me is budgeting. My problem is a combination of spending and overinvesting. I stress about whether to buy, rent, lease. There are sometimes so many things to consider, and I struggle to even start planning something like this. I can totally relate to this sense of just swimming in ideas, and it's really hard to budget in that circumstance. The underlying question I really hear in this is, how do I prioritize all the opportunities and options and competing voices that are coming at me? The swimming of ideas comes from the mix of the desires I have, my own values, what I see other people doing, and what others say I should be doing. There's so many competing messages too telling us this. We've got billboards, we've got advertisements in our feeds, we've got just the social media environment that we're in where, when we're scrolling, we just see people talking about so many different things. And then of course we have our friends and family who oftentimes will offer their opinions on what they think we should be doing. And in the midst of this, it's really hard to get a clear picture of what's going on. And so before we really start to talk about budgeting, we need to think about getting clear on what it is we want to pursue. So how do we sort through this? I've got 5 things that I think are going to help you to sort through this. So first, slow down. In our day and age, things can seem very urgent. So avoid unnecessary urgency. 2, get it on paper. And by that, I really mean get the thoughts out of your head and get it somewhere where you can see it. This could be a journal, a notebook. Maybe you open up the app on your phone, the Notes app, and you just start making a list or dictating, whatever is in your brain. But getting it out where you can see it, where you can organize it, is going to be really important. 3, prioritize what's important. And to help you do that, I want you to ask yourself 4 questions. The first question is, what are the rules that I live by? So what do I value in terms of how do I operate? Am I someone who is always on time, or I always do what I say I'm going to do? Or I value not having debt. There could be all sorts of rules that we live by. And so having a clear idea of what those are can help us to start to prioritize that list. The second question is, who's important to me? What are the relationships that I value? If I'm married, my spouse, God, my kids, those that I work with at my job. There could be all sorts of different people that are important to you that can help you evaluate this list. 3, who am I trying to become? And that's where do I want to grow as a person? Where do I feel sort of stuck but want to overcome? And so some of these questions can inform these thoughts about what we're going to pursue and prioritize. And then 4, what mission are we on? Are we called to be a mentor? Are we called to be a teacher? Are we called to lead others? Are we called to an organization to help it become more efficient and organized? There could be all sorts of callings that we have, but if we can ask ourselves that question and these other questions, that can help us prioritize this list that now we've gotten out of our head onto paper. And then 4th, I want you to talk it over. Talk it over with someone you trust, whether it's your spouse, whether it's a parent, a counselor, somebody that is going to hold confidence and is going to give you honest feedback and help you see something maybe you're not seeing, or help you avoid something that maybe you might be getting ready to step into and you really need to think twice about. And fifth, decide. So when you actually make a decision, you will start to get some more clarity. And this step really trips people up. Deciding is really difficult. It's super easy to let all of those thoughts continue to swirl in our head or not make a decision, because making a decision means you're committing. When you've got all these thoughts in your head, you're not committing to anything. And so that's really easy. It's really easy to keep doing that. It's really hard to commit. With indecision comes inaction. And a lot of that inaction and indecision comes from the fear of making the wrong decision or making a mistake. And so we can tend to be stopped in our tracks from moving forward. The cool thing about financial decisions is that a lot of the foundational stuff that you need for any particular goal are the same foundational things that you need for other goals. So there's a lot of goal action overlap. And so if you set these really firm, solid financial foundations, you're going to find that that sets you on a trajectory that if something changes in the future, it's actually pretty easy to adjust course, because the same actions you would be following for this particular decision are the same foundational things that you would do for this other thing. So just get moving forward. And I'll use the word paint or get off the ladder. And as you start to move, you will gain even more clarity in what decision is the right one. Okay, so back to the budget, right? Once we have clarity, then we can start to consider tools like a budget. Because a budget is really just the tool for directing the power of our income towards whatever it is we're pursuing. And with a budget, we're going to always allocate to essentials first, and then we're going to allocate towards that decision, the thing that we're going to pursue, or maybe the couple things that we're going to pursue. And here's where you got to be a little careful. You want to make sure that you avoid doing too much at the same time. When you do too much, you tend not to make progress as quickly, and it can sort of disincentivize or discourage your movement. So here are the essentials for budgeting. You need a plan. You need to have a tool. You need to track, and you need to measure. So as far as plans go, you could consider plans, and I've seen many budgeting plans. Some I would call pseudo budgeting, maybe not real budgeting, because I think you have to have all four of these components for it to actually be real budgeting. But you could take a yearly, monthly approach. Do you budget just once a year and kind of look back? Or do you budget monthly and look back? Or do you budget monthly and look forward? Is your budget very static? Month to month, it's pretty much the same, or year to year, it's pretty much the same? Or is your budget more dynamic because things change from month to month? Do you take an approach to budgeting that is, you automate all the bills and all the required expenses and the savings and the investing and the retirement, and then you just spend all the rest? Or do you take another approach where you do what's called a zero-based budget, where you take every month, you take your income, and then you allocate your expenses so that your income minus your expenses is equal to zero, and then you do that on a monthly basis. So these are all different ways to think about what plan for the budget you're going to have. Now, not all of these directions are created equally. I've met people that do what I would call not, real budgeting, and it's not as effective as other modes of budgeting. So when we get through this, I'm going to share with you what I think is the best way to budget. But two, you need a tool, right? So you could have it all in your head and keep track of all the numbers. Pretty difficult. You could have a spreadsheet, and I've seen people use a spreadsheet for budgeting. Or there's several different apps that you can either access through a web browser or on your phone that can help you with budgeting. So have a tool. Third is you need to track. Tracking is part and parcel to budgeting. This is one of those things that I think people don't include in budgeting a lot, and I would say that they're not quite budgeting if they're not tracking. So, but you could track irregularly, so like once every month, once every couple months, once every 6 months, or you could track very regularly, maybe 2 times a week. So how often you're tracking, but the tracking needs to be part of, it's part and parcel to budgeting. And then 4, you need to be measuring. So you need to be then evaluating what your plan was, what actually happened, and reconciling that, or just you want to make sure that those numbers are squaring. If your plan and your actual is way off, well, you need to then make an adjustment for the next budgeting period. So the 4 budget essentials are having a plan, having a tool, tracking, and measuring. The way I lead people through budgeting is monthly, zero-based, using any one of a number of flavors of apps, and then tracking at least a couple times per week. So in my experience, that's the most effective way to budget in an ongoing way. A lot of people have objections to budgets. It feels restrictive. It's too time consuming. Or I have an irregular income, so it makes it really difficult. And all of those are valid considerations. And I'll just say this, that if you're struggling in this area of spending, the budget is an excellent tool for overcoming those challenges. And I think if you would give yourself 90 days, you might find that you start to see how these different objections and concerns will be solved. But it takes time to learn that skill and to get in the habit and for it to come a little more naturally. So that 90 days is the minimum I would suggest somebody really dedicate towards trying to implement a budget. And the benefits are many. Peace of mind, control of your spending, improved relationships. I can't stress enough how many couples have been drawn together through the process of budgeting. And then 3, you start to see progress. And when you see progress through your budget, you start to get momentum towards those decisions that you've made, the things that you've decided you want to pursue. Because when you have clarity of that direction, then that budget becomes a really useful tool to get you where you want to go. And that's why I help families answer a whole bunch of financial questions that keep them up at night. And so if you have any other questions about how budgets work or how to figure out what it is you should be pursuing, email questions@tapestryfp.com or visit tapestryfp.com/ask and submit a question there.